Okay, we are down to the final game of the U.S. college basketball season, and in the women's tournament, there's a new champ. The University of South Carolina defeated Iowa 87-75 on Sunday to win its third NCAA Women's Championship and set a new viewership record. Now, it was the last chance on the court for Iowa's Caitlin Clark, a star who scored 30 points in her final collegiate game, and now she's expected to be the #1 pick in the upcoming WNBA draft. The Lady Gamecocks made history books with the 10th perfect season, 38-0, in the history of Division I women's basketball. Now, the men are going to be tipping off in, about 40 minutes from now to choose their champion. A tough battle between Purdue and the University of Connecticut is certainly anticipated, with two big men playing starring roles there. Okay, now as fans look forward to those matches, sports enthusiasts are engaging with the games as never before and using new technology. CGTN's Jim Spellman explains.
A few days ago, some of us were over at Pat's house watching our basketball team play an out-of-town game on TV.
This is what it meant to be a sports fan back in the day, but now technology is dramatically altering how fans engage with sports. Neil Horowitz hosts the Digital and Social Media Sports podcast. He says today, social media is a key driver of fan engagement.
You used to have to maybe you call your dad on the phone and say, "Are you watching this?" or your buddy. And now, I mean, the sports bar is everywhere. Everyone feels like they have something to say and wants to sort of go viral to some degree, but also be that person that starts a conversation.
He goes Hollywood.
Podcasts and social media allow players to reach fans directly. Basketball star LeBron James dominates on the court, while off the court, King James reaches well over 100 million followers.
I'm LeBron James, and this is my third children's book, and I'm happy to share with you guys.
Building his brand well beyond the role of traditional athlete.
So many different ways now for them to reach fans, and these athletes are taking advantage of all of them because they're lucrative opportunities as well.
Fantasy sports and app-based betting are driving fan engagement in new ways.
So I just started sports betting recently, something new to my world. Just a way to have more on the game and be more enthusiastic about it.
But there is a risk the betting will overshadow the athletics.
The goal is that for teams to see gambling as a way in, and then once they get their attention, then you try to win them over.
The rise of streaming services is helping fuel the globalization of sports.
Leagues, teams, and players are using technology to build truly global fan bases, even in countries where their sport may not enjoy widespread popularity.
These clubs, these leagues have been putting a lot of money and investing in globalizing their sport. And now that you have the more ease of accessibility to be able to watch these matches, you actually have something to deliver them and be able to give them something to engage with.
As evolving technology alters the way fans engage with sports, there are challenges for teams and leagues.
How do we monetize the digital fan? How do we monetize fans that may or may not watch our games, that certainly may or may never come to a game?
Digital fan engagement continues to evolve as new tech like AI and virtual reality advance. The sports industry hopes that means a better and more profitable experience. Jim Spellman, CGTN, Washington.
Wow. Okay, we're going to take a deeper dive into how technology is changing sports fan engagement. Joining us to discuss, Mike Bako, the sports editor at dailynational.com. Mike, always a pleasure to see you, buddy.
Thanks for having me.
I want to dig into Jim's very excellent story we just saw there. Fan engagement has changed so much in just the past few years. Now, where are some of the biggest areas of growth? Now, they're everywhere, but I want you to really focus for us. Where are the biggest areas, and which sports are getting the biggest bump?
Well, the biggest bump obviously is for the NFL. They're the one league that's maintained their viewership, grown in terms of their viewership. But the biggest driver in this fan engagement, even though there's been a bit of a pushback from a standpoint of the viewership aspect of things, but gambling is what's really driving things. Right now, you could gamble on how many points Zach Edey's going to get in the first half, in the full game, how many rebounds, how many technical fouls the UConn head coach is going to get. So much of this is driven by these incremental changes in the way that we're watching the game. It's not necessarily reflecting itself in the viewership, but it's reflecting in the overall engagement. Your reporter and the guest mentioned on social media, so many fans now are consuming games in non-traditional ways. very few fans are sitting down and watching a 2.5-hour baseball game, a 3-hour football game. It's really become their own viewing platforms, whether it's on social, following their gambling bets, or, of course, the old standby fantasy.
And you talked about Zach Edey there, of course, the big man for Purdue, ready to tip it off now in a little less than half an hour. So how do changes in fan engagement translate to changes in business or economic? Let's talk about ticket sales, merchandising. I mean, we just talked about LeBron James there. King James now 100 million viewers, $1 billion athlete.
Well, when it comes to Zach Edey, the interesting thing that I don't think any one of us knew until this Final Four was he can't profit from name, image, license, this big boon in college sports, because he's a foreign player from Canada. So he hasn't been able to cash in on this, but that's how a lot of players have been able to cash in on it. Caitlin Clark, obviously the transcendent star from Iowa, millions of dollars. Even middle-rung players are getting hundreds of thousands of dollars, and now it's become almost an arms race for some of the boosters in terms of how can they draw more people in and how can they keep them in that environment. So that's been the biggest economic driver when it comes to this, but also just in terms of athletes forming their own podcasts, forming their own media companies, parlaying that through their social media accounts and their larger following than just fans that are watching their specific team in their specific market.
And what about AI and other technological advances? What are they doing to advance the shifting fan engagement?
They're allowing fans to personalize how they're consuming and watching games. You can now watch on a streaming service or on an alternate broadcast, whether they're talking about just the gambling lines. If you want to just focus on a specific team during the national championship for ESPN, they had 4 different telecasts, one for the traditional broadcast, one for each team, and then they had another one where they were talking about gambling and they had coaches' analysis. So right now it's all about personalizing what your experience is that sort of monoculture of everyone sitting down watching the local team broadcast or watching the national broadcast. That's kind of becoming way more fragmented than what we've been used to.
Okay, let's talk about major sporting events globally as well as here in the U.S. How are we seeing these shifts in engagement thanks to social media and as well as influencers who are everywhere now?
Well, it's the influencers, but also it's being influenced by the star players. I mean, obviously, Caitlin Clark, as great as she is and as great as the strides that the women's game has made, they almost had 20 million viewers for that championship game in the middle of the afternoon. Let's also keep in mind that the preceding semifinal game had about 7 million viewers. So that's kind of the average of where that is. So the stars drive the ratings. The Super Bowl is always big, but when Kansas City and Patrick Mahomes is in it, it's even higher. When Tom Brady was on his Super Bowl runs, the ratings were just a bit higher. Messi in the MSL. Sorry, no one's really paying attention to the Apple TV broadcast or what David Beckham is doing. He was the biggest star there for that Miami franchise, but the stars drive it. That's what fans are tuning in for, the casual fan, which really drives those numbers up.
Okay, let's talk about some of the problems, challenges, if you will. I want to talk about the individual players first, teams, universities, and I want to talk about universities because Coach Prime, Deion Sanders, blistered his Colorado football team over the weekend after a professor called out some of the football players for simply being lazy in class and not paying attention, pointing out that 95% of those kids are not going to play football. All they want is the NIL money right now.
Yeah, I mean, and that's an overriding problem in all college sports. Think about John Calipari. Now, whatever you want to say about his coaching acumen, in Kentucky, he basically got run out of Kentucky after a few years because he was kind of turning that into an MBA factory where he was not keeping kids there for a longer period of time. The boosters basically said, hey, you know what? If you could get more money in Arkansas, go to Arkansas. Get that 5-year contract. It's the same thing with players. Right now, there's an arms race going on. Deion Sanders kind of came in and popularized it in a way where during his first speech to the team, he basically said, look around here. I'm bringing in my own luggage. I'm shipping some of you out.
Not so some, all of those kids got
all of you. It's become very mercenary in the sense that where can I get the most money? Not even where can I get the most playing time, because I think players have actually now realized I may not be going pro, but if I could get 50,000, 75,000, 100,000 legally over the course of my time in school per year, that's going to be something that they're doing. It's really turned into the Wild West. And it's one of the reasons why a lot of coaches now have decided to forego head coaching and move into the pro ranks for lower level assistant type of things because they don't want to deal with it.
And, you know, and also there are so many people that play fantasy football. But you have to feel a little bit for these players who get blistered because, hey, my fantasy guy let me down this week. And, you know, they may have played a great game and won, but all they hear about is you only had 7 points.
All they hear about is that, and that was in the good old days, meaning a year or two ago, where, hey, it's kind of jocular, and they're complaining that they didn't win their fantasy league or they have to pay off an incremental bet. But now players are getting social media threats about not covering the point spread, not hitting their over on the points. There was a player from Iowa who basically closed all her social media accounts because she was the player that ran into the UConn player to get the charge on the offensive foul call. So these are the things that are happening now beyond just cheering and booing during the actual game. They're finding these players now in their real lives offline. It's become very scary for a lot of them.
Okay, a couple of wrap-up points here. I'm not worried about Zach Edey. He's going to do okay money-wise. Secondly, you still owe me 20 push-ups because I won our Super Bowl bet. But I'll give you a chance. I'll give you a chance. You choose who you think is going to win tonight, and I'll take the other team.
Okay, I'm going with Hurley going back-to-back in UConn. I think they're just playing too well. I think Edey will get his points, but I do think I'm going to try to redeem myself. I do think UConn's going to pull it out and really vault themselves into the all-time pantheon now of college basketball programs. It's really been a remarkable rebound story for Hurley and for UConn ever since Jim Calhoun and Kevin Ollie left.
Okay, good stuff, Mike. Always a pleasure. And next time we'll chat.
My pleasure, Sean.
We'll see how we did. Okay, thanks again, man.
All right.